Counselor Morrow, just doing a sound check. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 4 of the 2021-2022 Finance Committee budget deliberations. Before we start today, I'd like to read the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the land of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. Madam Clerk, is there anything that we need to be aware of before we start?
How about a roll call?
Roll call.
Councillor Campbell.
Present.
Councillor Carlson.
Here.
Councillor Kaufman.
Present.
Councillor Croson.
Good morning.
Councillor Morrow.
Yeah.
Councillor Parker.
Here.
Acting Mayor Hagan.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Here.
And Mayor Spearman.
Here.
Thank you. I have on my list to start at A101, is that correct? Okay, thank you. All right, Finance Committee, we're on A101, 311 customer service. This reduction in combination with the reduction in travel and training will enable 311 to achieve the 5% target. I will move that Finance Committee recommends the acceptance of A101. Do I have a second? Councillor Campbell? Questions? There are no questions. Debate? There's no debate. I'll call the question. Any opposed? There are none. That passes unanimously. A102, Transportation Administration. This initiative will reduce the annual slope repairs monitoring budget to $25,000 from the original budget of $50,000. The budget for incidental damage to the city vehicles will be reduced to $30,000, approximately half of the current $61,000 budget. I will move that Finance Committee outside council accepts A102. Do I have a seconder? Mayor Spearman. Questions? I do have a question. So we've actually pulled two different things into the same initiative, is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Can you just briefly describe the slope repairs? I understand it's in the backgrounder, and that is just part of it. Is there, how much of each is in that dollar amount? Do we know?
If you look at the first line under objective, $25,000 is the reduction.
I'm sorry, I did read that, didn't I?
Okay. There's a $25,000 associated with slope monitoring and $30,000 associated with
Thank you. I just had a
vehicle damage.
had a fog there for a second, Mr. Hawkins. Thank you very much. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I had a similar question. I was just curious, did we fund the slope monitoring out of transportation?
That's correct. This is, well, that's where it resides. That's where the expertise resides in terms of Mr. Jewell. He's currently oversees the monitoring program.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? I see none. Debate? Open for debate? I see no debate. I'll call the question. Any opposed to A102? There are none. That passes unanimously. A103, which is connected to A104, sidewalk, pathway, and bridge maintenance, options 1 and 2. A103 is 5% reduction. A2 is a 10% reduction. Do I have a mover for A103 or A104? Councillor Kaufman? Your hand up?
My hand is up for the purpose of, unless somebody is wanting to move A104. I'll move A103. My hand is up for questions on this one, though.
Certainly, if you want to do A103, feel free to just to move that.
I just did. Move 103, please.
Okay, do we have a seconder for 103?
Carlson.
Carlson, thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Kaufman? Do you
Yes.
still- Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Hawkins, under the backgrounder in this one, it says each of these areas is considered core. We have no non-core aspect of this business unit to be reducing.
At this particular, what's proposed today is all core-related services. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Is the condition assessment done every 3 to 5 years? I'm just trying to figure out whether or not that is how you're changing it to every 3 to 5 years, or is that what the current assessment schedule is?
That's the current assessment schedule, the timing of those, yes.
Okay, thank you. And what does the $55,000 represent then?
The primarily in terms of its maintenance activities, it's a combination of contract services and in-house repair work. So it's emergent work. It's daily tasks associated with bridge washing, rail maintenance, or bridge rail maintenance, those kinds of things. So this is a modest reduction associated with the operating budget. We also have a CIP that deals with the more major issues associated with both sidewalks, pathways, and bridge maintenance as well. So this is seen as a reasonable reduction on the operating costs.
Okay, so doing the math, the budget's about 1.1 million.
No, just again 5%.
Well,
just
yeah,
over
5%.
This is 5%.
Yeah, so it's 5% out of about. Am I doing the math wrong? Because 10% would be 110,000, so that would be 1.1 million.
Yeah, give or take, yes.
Give or take. Okay, so it's 55,000 out of about $1 million budget. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson.
Thank you. Mr. Hawkins answered my question in his response. I'm good.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
I think my question was answered. My question was answered. Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. Debate, does the mover want to open debate?
No, he doesn't. Thank you.
There's no debate. Would you like to close?
Question.
Call the question. Any opposed? There are none. That passes unanimously. A103, which makes A104 unnecessary. Next item is A105, traffic operations and signals. This reduction consolidates a number of areas in traffic operations and signals with overall 5% reduction. $10,000 in traffic studies, $15,000 in sign fabrication installation, $10,000 in line painting, $85,000 traffic signals, labor and equipment, and $15,000 from temporary traffic control. I will move that Finance Committee recommend this acceptance to City Council. Do I have a second? Councillor Campbell. Questions? I have a question. Are there any FTEs attached to this?
Not to this particular one, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. No further questions? Anyone for debate? There's no debate. I'll call the question. Are there any opposed to A105? There are none. That is carried unanimously. Next thing up is A106, which is attached to A123. Road maintenance and operating transfers, option 1 and 2. This initiative reduces the amount spent annually on road repairs, potholes and patching repair, and sidewalk repairs by approximately 5%. which will result in a lowering of the overall condition of our road network and sidewalk network. This has an effect of 0.5 person years. Do I have a mover for A106 or A123? Councillor Carlson.
Thank you. I had some questions if someone wants to move it, but if no one's moving it, then I don't have any questions.
We do not have a mover yet. Councillor Kaufman?
I'll move 106. I have questions as well.
Right. Seconder, Mayor Spearman. Questions, Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just can the statement lowering of the overall condition of our road network and sidewalk network be expanded upon, please?
So in the context of how we do condition assessments, we use an assessment tool that establishes pavement quality index, a PQI. We currently maintain a typical standard of a 50%, 5 out of 10 score on locals, and then we try to achieve 6 or 7 on arterial roads. The impact of this is there will be a modest decrease in PQI over time, depending on ongoing funding, a reduction in ongoing funding. So that's the measure associated with this particular reduction initiative.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins.
Councillor Carlson?
Thank you. We passed 103, which talked about sidewalk repair and maintenance, reducing it by 5%. This one, I believe also, sorry, I'm scrolling back and forth, also talks about sidewalk. Is this going to majorly impact if we reduce sidewalk repair in one initiative and further reducing it in another? Is that going to be a whole lot of impact on the sidewalk system?
No, the majority of this expense is related to asphalt, is the road work, or the roads itself, and not sidewalks.
Okay, because it does speak to sidewalks, so I just want to
think
make
that's
sure.
I think that's misstated in the context of the previous reduction initiative.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Mayor Spearman?
Thank you. So the way I understand it is, for many of these things, the city maintains a priority assessment of projects. And so we have a backlog. And are there any, what you're saying is it's just going to delay the implementation of some projects, a small number of them, but we still will address projects on a priority basis?
Absolutely.
Is there anything that's being done? We've done road maintenance and sidewalk repairs over the years, have lots of experience with that. Is it all sort of labor intensive? Are there any technologies that tend to reduce the cost? This
is a combination of labor, equipment, supply, materials, those kinds of things as well. We constantly are evaluating our methods to be more efficient, to look for products that stand up better, in particular in terms of pothole repairs and frost boil repairs, those kinds of things. So, but this assumes that we continue to do that as part of the program.
Okay. And any significant issues will still be taken care of?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Further questions? I see none. Does the mover want to open debate?
No, thank you.
I see no debate.
Question?
Call the question. Is there any opposed to the adoption of A106?
Hagan.
Call the roll, please.
Councillor Carlson.
Agreed.
Councillor Kaufman.
In favor?
Councillor Croson.
In favor.
Councillor Morrow.
Favor.
Councillor Parker.
Favor.
Acting Mayor Hagan.
Opposed?
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Favor.
Mayor Spearman.
In favor.
Counselor Campbell.
In favor?
Carried 8-1.
Thank you. Next is A107, sweeping option 1, which is connected to A122 as option 2. As before, A107 is a 5% increase, and A122 is a 10% reduction in street sweeping. Do I have a mover for either 107 or 122?
I'll move 122, Higgin.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Acting Mayor moves A122. Do I have a second?
Yeah, Joe.
Councilor Morrow, second that. Thank you. Questions? A122. There are no questions.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor, my hand is up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Carlson. You're way over on the other side of the screen, you know, and I don't see very well. Go ahead.
I'll move.
Go
I'll
ahead.
move closer. Thank you on this. This is a fairly large reduction in our street sweeping. Similar to our parks that I asked before, how would we pick the winners and losers? Like which neighborhoods are going to get cleaned and which are going to get left?
So current practice, and what's contemplated here is our priority routes, so our arterials and collectors would continue to get the same level of service as currently. What's impacted here is the frequency of local street sweeping, which occurs annually today for the entire city's network. What we do today is we do it. We deploy folks by quadrant, north side, south side, west side, and rotate it in that fashion. This would suggest if we continue to do it on that basis, we may not be able to complete the entire network on an annual basis, based on the resources. And again, it is somewhat dependent on what the prior winter brings as far as the amount of material that's placed on the road as well. So we would continue to operate on that rotational basis in terms of priority. So and we do, so it's establishing that schedule in terms of deployment.
But if this is ongoing and lasting, if I sort of just work it out, there could be areas of the city that don't get swept even if this is ongoing for
That's
2
correct.
years.
That's correct. That is our concern, and that's what's described here in the initiative. I think to the extent that this is the higher the more significant impact in terms of local street sweeping. It could potentially lead to our inability to complete the entire city on an annual basis.
Thank you.
Councilor Kaufman.
Thank you. I think part of my question has been answered. The other part would be, but it would still be done in priority order. So the majors and arterials collectors would be done. That's pretty much guaranteed, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Mayor Spearman.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the wording in the background. So just a few minutes ago, the Director of Infrastructure said it could impact our ability to do the entire city. And the wording here is a 10% reduction will severely impact spring sweeping activities. We will not be able to complete all residential areas and will likely only be able to complete 2/3 of the city each year.
I think that is the risk until we actually, assuming this is passed, then we're going to have to take a hard look at deployment and see to what extent we can in fact accomplish what we currently do. There is a risk with decreased resources to this extent that there may be a quadrant of the city that essentially doesn't get done every year, but gets done every other year.
What proportion of the budget does 285,000? Is it 10%?
10%.
So a 10% reduction in the budget will affect 66%.
Potentially.
Or 33, let's flip it around the other way. A 10% reduction in the budget will affect 33% of the service?
Potentially.
Okay, so residential neighborhoods in an entire area, like as the example, it could be all of West Lethbridge 1 year. Next year, all of South Lethbridge. Third year, all of North Lethbridge does not get residential street sweeping.
I don't think it wouldn't play out exactly that way. We would attempt to prioritize to the extent that we can. There is a risk that some portion of one of those three quadrants doesn't get completed. Again, this is weather dependent too. If we get dry conditions, a drier spring, then that gives us increased days to actually stay on top of the operation. Anyway, that's.
Are we going to reduce in any way the gravel that's put down in the wintertime? Is that intended in order to offset this?
That comes up in, I believe in option 1, or it's coming up in terms of a snow and ice control option as well. That's a 108. That's the next one.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yep, Acting Mayor Higgin.
Thank you for this, these questions. It's making me really understand more. I've got numerous calls from different quadrants of the community that said, wow, it was fantastic. This year I had a street sweeper through 4 times and another one 3 times. I know myself in my area, I saw it 3 times. And I know last year we had quite a bit of gravel, etc., put down on the roadways, especially in the main collector roads, etc. And I'm just further to Mayor Spearman's question. This 10% down is going to landlock one of our communities. Or one of our quadrants of the city. I'm just really perplexed by that, seeing how many times they were around last year or this year cleaning. And so, yeah, I guess my question is similar to Mayor Spearman's, is the 10% down could literally completely excuse one quadrant of the community, or from what I understood from Mr. Hawkins, that it may affect. Is that correct, Mr. Hawkins?
It's May at this particular point.
Thank you.
Councillor Morrow.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I'm looking at A122, and we're told this is 10% of the budget. So that's 285,000, which, if my math is correct, means the budget is 2.85 million. Is that correct?
I would have to double check that, Councillor Morrow.
Okay, and my follow-up question to that, excuse me. If I look at A107, which is 5% reduction, that's $85,000. So I don't know if 5% is 85,000, why is 10% 285,000? Because that then, if I do the math and consider what the total budget is, those are 2 significant different numbers. They're not even close. So is there any explanation as to why the difference between the 5% and 10% numbers on these pages?
Is it because of the half as many people to do the work? Is that why that you can't do as much work? Is that the thought?
Yeah, I don't have the details in front of me here.
Okay, we'll come
Okay,
back,
well-
we'll come back to
Well,
one.
it's kind of important because, you know, if we're dealing with 5%, looks like we're dealing with $85,000, and this resolution might have passed quite easily. Now we look at the 10% page, and it should be just double what the 85 is, but it's, you know, it's more than double. So that's a concern. But I have a couple other questions. I can tell you that maybe Mr. Hawkins, tell me what the street sweeping process is before I ask other questions. Like how do you deploy your team to street sweep?
Depending on the roadway and depending on the amount of material down, it tends to be a gang approach, so it's more than one sweeper at a time. So that we try to only do one pass in particular on the local neighborhoods. Depending on the amount of material, though, that may not be possible, and we actually do some repeat sweeping. Again, it's all done. It's all automated. It's with large equipment, large street sweeping equipment and operators. The material comes off, and then it gets disposed of. There's a certain capacity in each street sweeper to actually pick up the material. Then it has to return to a dump site at the operations yard and then back to the site.
So can you give me an explanation as to why we would have street sweeping done 3 times in 1 week on the same street with your deployment of 5 street sweepers all at the same time, 3 times in 1 week?
I'd have to actually look at the specific situation in which neighborhood we're talking about, but yeah, I don't have a direct answer for that. Typically, it's a single pass on local streets.
So for people to tell me that they've seen street sweepers 3 times in 1 week, you don't have an explanation for that?
It has a function of what's on the road. In some instances, we're dealing with construction debris as well. We're passing through a neighborhood because it's been graveled up or dirtied up by other activities beyond just regular winter snow maintenance activities.
Yeah, thank you. I'll help out, Deputy Mayor.
City Treasurer?
I just wanted to highlight, so each department looked at what a 5% impact would be and a 10% impact would be. And then in transportation's example, then the business unit manager would have strategized about what areas to reduce to get to the 5%. So option 1 and option 2 might not exactly be 5% and 10% because they looked at the department as a whole and tried to manage where they could adjust reductions to get to a 10% for the whole department, not necessarily 10% for a program. So the $285,000 is the total budget for street sweeping is roughly $1.45 million. So $285,000 would be roughly 20% of that budget in a 122.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Hawkins, I just, what is the, aside from, you know, we'd have dirtier streets, what other impacts long-term would there be with not being able to clean our streets? For the average guy who doesn't really care that the street out front has got a bit of gravel on it, what can we see as being a real impact?
Well, there's 2 primary reasons we sweep the streets. The gravel itself can create a hazard for cyclists and motorists and motorcyclists, so that is a concern. So taking the gravel up in the springtime improves road safety. The other aspect is environmental. This material ultimately washes into the storm system and ends up in the Old Man River. So, and there's still street sweeping is all about gathering up salts and oils and debris on the road as well to try to improve our environmental impact.
Right, thank you.
Acting Mayor Hagan?
Thank you. Just to that last question here, so our street sweepers actually collect oil?
To the extent that it's part of the debris itself, that it gets gathered or stuck to the sands and gravels as well.
Okay.
Right, I have no more questions. Does the mover wish to open debate?
Sorry, I do. Deputy Mayor, sorry, I do.
Go ahead, Councilor Morrow.
So again, just to be clear, to the city treasurer, so you said the 1.45 million is the total budget for street sweeping. I'm reading these two sheets. Street sweeping option 1, street sweeping option 2. Is the math correct? I'm asking you, is $85,000 5% of 1.45 million?
Councilor Morrow, the 85,000 is 5.8%, and the 285,000 is 20%. The narrative relates to all the option 2s for the transportation department would add up to 10% of the total department. So that for transportation, they did not look at 10% of street sweeping. They looked at 10% of the total department. And of that, they're proposing $285,000 would be the strategy to reduce street sweeping to help get to the 10% overall.
Thank you for that.
Can I just add to that, and hopefully that's clear to all of council. So, as I said yesterday, I would recommend that that council members look at the reduction opportunity, the savings opportunity, and the impact, the assessed impact. As the treasurer has said, the math will not align on all of these because individual budget lines were looked at as part of a departmental 5%, 10% reduction exercise. So my recommendation would be not to be overly concerned about whether 2 times 5 equals 10, but really it's about the impact versus the reduction opportunity.
Thank you, City Manager. Are there any questions, further questions? Councilor Morrow?
Thank you, City Manager. I'm sorry, and I'm not trying to be difficult, but if we're told that this is street sweeping category, that's what it says as the program, and now we are told that 1.45 million is street sweeping, is the cost to the taxpayer for street sweeping. How difficult is it to figure out 5% and 10% and come with accurate numbers? Like, I'm a little confused now because if you're telling me that the street sweeping option 1 is pretty accurate at 5%, we were told it's 5.8, and then A122, which is street sweeping option 2, we assume is 10%, and we're told it's more like 20 because of what you and the city treasurer have described. Is that the same for the rest of these in these pages? Like, why isn't it just simple? 5%, 10%? Because that was the task.
Because, well, no, because, Councilor Morrow, the task was not applied at the individual business unit level. We asked business unit managers to look at their operations and determine what a 5% and 10% reduction would look like across their operations. So that could include multiple individual business lines. My message is, because there will be more like this, and we can try and explain each case to council. I think my message is what's really important is look at the impact versus the reduction. That's all that matters at the end of the day. And we could walk you through the exercise that was applied, but I think again what's important is the reduction and the impact.
Thank you very much for your answer. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Acting Mayor Hagan?
Thank you. Well, I'm sorry, that's confusing to me because the impact is all that matters, yes, but if we see that it's going to be a 10% in the background, a 10% reduction to the program, and we find out it's a 30% reduction to the program, impact is changed dramatically from 10% of what it shows to 285,000, for example, being 30% or whatever. So it's my understanding, the question is that, so if there is this program is 285,000, this could actually be pulling from other parts of the department and not just street sweeping. Is that correct?
Councillor Hagan, I think probably the way to describe this was the business unit manager would have looked at, okay, 10% for the total department, and then started to dig into each program that they provide to this community. And perhaps in this instance, and I'm just using this as an example, perhaps the business unit manager was more concerned about the impact to snow removal than street sweeping. Again, just as an example. So their strategy would have been to take additional money from one program compared to the impact that 10% would have on another. And so it's the overall department 10%, not necessarily the individual programs.
Well, then my question would be this, again, it confuses it more. Then why wouldn't we just come with the department transportation? 5% is 6.3 million and 10% is 12.6, just hypothetically picking numbers, and be done, and they work out within those departments how that works. Dropping it into each and every one, this is making absolutely no sense as a 5% and 10% if we're going on the impact is all that matters. I'm sorry, this is why would we not just come with all of transportation? Because now, if this is approved, it could actually affect another part of that department, which we will not approve later. So I'm sorry, I'm just really confused, but I guess that's really not a question, it's debate. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
I apologize for the confusion, Councillor Hagan. And if you'd like, perhaps we can take a break and we can walk through it. Again, whether or not council decides to approve a discrete individual option, it will not have unforeseen effects on other parts of the department unless they've been identified. This is the procedure we've applied over the past couple of months. It's sound. I'm sorry it's confusing. But again, I would recommend that councillors focus on the outcome, or sorry, the impact and the degree of savings. If you have a question about could something that is put forward as a 5% reduction, what would that look like at 8%? Please raise that. But a lot of effort was put into this process, and it was done in the manner the treasurer described.
City manager.
Thank you. And so to that, Mr. City Manager, I'm looking at this more of like a police budget now. Why wouldn't we just take the department and be a lot easier and let that department figure the 5 or 10%? Because again, I go back to it's going to have offsetting effects to other parts of the department than what you've indicated. So could you tell me why we wouldn't just come transportation? What is your 5% reduction and let them deal with it? Or what's your 10% and deal with that rather than each and every one, which could have offsetting a cost?
Yeah, Mayor, I don't think council would have accepted that kind of blanket budget.
You know that?
Well, we never have. We've never asked for that.
Well, I
In the
know.
budgets
So
that we
you don't say that
worked on,
council
you've never
would not
asked for
accept
that.
it because you don't know. I'll just drop out. I guess
If I could
stop asking questions.
If I could respond, because I think it's important for you to or at least important for us to explain why we took this approach. And again, this would have been a great conversation a few months ago. We did do what you said, Councillor Hagan, accept that. We went to the individuals that manage the business and said, okay, look at your operations, look at your business lines, and look for opportunities. What would you have to do with the least impact on service to citizens to achieve a 5% or 10% reduction? That was the question that was posed. So they did have the flexibility to apply some judgment and some thinking across the business lines in their department. We couldn't just come back with an overall number because that would have left, I believe, council in a position of not having the opportunity to see where those savings would be achieved and what the impacts to service level would be, which is council's responsibility. So the approach we took, we thought would give council the best information to make those decisions.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I agree, we should have had this conversation a while ago because as the city manager told me yesterday about the old math and new math, I sat down and actually figured it out before today. And so but I appreciate the explanation that confirms my understanding from city manager and city treasurer. I started thinking of it in terms of the police budget, and that may help acting Mayor Higgin. The police didn't come back and say 5% is 2.5 million, 10% is 4 million, choose your cut. They came back and said, here are the areas. It wasn't 5% out of patrol, 5% out of everything they do. And so I started thinking of it that way, and it made a lot more sense. The difference with police budget and these budgets is we don't actually control the allocation within the budget for police, but we do control the allocation of budget through the corporation. So I hope that helps. The penny dropped and the light bulb went off in my head last night. The city treasurer, I think, has explained it incredibly well. I hope everyone now understands and we stop focusing on the actual percentages, focus on the bigger picture.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much. I think Mr. Dalton's explanation there is perfect. It gives you a perfect example of why we're doing what we're doing. Because if we were to do it the other way, with all due respect, Councillor Higgin, the department heads would just make the decision, then the consequences would occur, and then people would be coming back to us going, did you know that this thing was cut? Did you know this thing has changed? This allows us an opportunity to explain to the community each and every service level where we've reduced, because now we have our own say. We don't put our own personal values over each one of these decisions, whereas the police commission has a board of directors that has to answer for theirs. But this, I think, it explains it perfectly. I appreciate Mr. Dalton's explanation there. It makes a lot of sense, and I like the logic of how they went about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
I believe at this point in the budget, we do have to accept the numbers that have been provided by the city manager and his staff and work with those numbers. We're looking, they're offering 285,000. I think we're into micromanagement when we begin to say should be less, should be more. I think our job as governors is to look at the information that's been provided, and I think we can ask intelligent questions. But to try to change the numbers without personally having expertise in the department operations is a stretch too far for me. So I hope we can focus on the initiatives that have been presented to us rather than try to manipulate the numbers one way or the other.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on A122? I see none. Does the mover want to open debate?
I'll leave it open.
Thank you. Is there any debate on A122, sorry? Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I appreciate the vast discussion and questions we've had on this. I won't be supporting this option. I think it's a little too deep for our community at this time. Not mentioning the impact on our storm system and the water quality, it would be a miss as well. I just think this is a little too much for our community to absorb right now, and a little too much to ask. So I won't be supporting this option.
Mayor Spearman.
I will support the option. I have confidence the department can achieve this, and I view it as a stretch goal.
Any other debate? Seeing none. Councillor Morrow.
That's okay.
Would the mover like to close?
Question.
We'll call the question by roll call, please.
Councillor Kaufman.
In favor.
Councillor Carlson.
Opposed.
Oh, sorry, I messed that up. Councillor Croson.
Opposed.
Councillor Morrow.
Favor?
Counselor Parker,
Favor?
Counselor, or Acting Mayor Hagan,
Favor?
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro,
Opposed?
Mayor Spearman,
In favor.
Counselor Campbell.
In favor?
That carries 6-3.
Next up, we have A108, which is attached to A124. Transportation, snow and ice options. This reduction initiative affects core services of snow and ice control. Do I have a mover for A108 or A124?
I'll move A108.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Is there a second? Mayor Spearman?
Councillor Kaufman?
Thanks, Councillor Kaufman. We got Mayor Spearman in there. We will be deliberating on A108. Are there questions? Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. To Mr. Hawkins, I'm assuming, what's the impact on the snow and ice policy? It states a slightly lower service level. I'm just wanting to know how that's going to impact the policy.
In terms of the current policy and our current priority system, no change. This is really about monitoring weather conditions more closely, being more judicious, more efficient in terms of the application of de-icing materials in particular, and again being trying to optimize the snow removal process, the point at which we're obligated to windrow and haul snow to the snow dump sites.
Thank you. Madam Treasurer, snow removal is kind of a pay me now or pay me later, isn't it? We can remove the 190 from taxation, but ultimately any shortage is going to come out of the MRSR, correct?
That's correct, Councillor Kaufman.
Okay, this is just basically giving you an understanding of that there is some funding in there, less pressure on MRSR, but pressure nonetheless, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. One of my questions was just answered. Thank you. And just further to that, so this means if there's a massive snowstorm and we need to get her done, it will be done. It will be cleared. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. This is about snow watch monitoring, after hours personnel. Can you explain a bit of that to me, what snow watch and monitoring reduction means?
So we have dedicated employees during the winter months on a 24/7 basis, actually monitoring our road weather information system, and monitoring forecasts, and actually physically monitoring, in particular, our arterial network for icing conditions, and ultimately doing the call out at the point that we have snow accumulations or ice conditions that require actual equipment deployment. So that is a dedicated group of folks that patrol to be proactive, to make sure we deploy at the right moment, not too late, but not too soon as well, and not to over respond as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins, because that answers an important question in the community that I get all the time. When we have a snow event and people phone me and say, what were you thinking? Weren't you watching the Weather Channel? And so we do monitor that. That's correct, right?
That's correct. In fact, we have equipment specifically located, weather equipment installed on Whoop Up Drive as the primary mechanism for monitoring actual road conditions. But that we also subscribe to a weather system, a weather network, a weather management system that is in fact more accurate than either the weather network or in some instances Environment Canada's forecasts, in order to be proactive and stay ahead of the storm to the extent that we can.
Okay, thank you. And so just a follow-up question on that. We now employ 4 people. Is that correct to do this?
That's correct.
And this is reducing it. Um, what do those people do? And if I'm out of bounds on this, forgive me. What do those people do when we've got a month of clear, sunny, beautiful weather in January, we'll say? Like that ever happens. But
I don't have a list of their specific tasks, but they are primarily associated to, there is still winter maintenance activities or road maintenance activities that occur. There's cold patching that's occurring. There's other maintenance activities that we deploy the winter staff to as well, even during times when the weather is nice like it is today.
okay, thank you. A final question, if I can, Deputy Mayor. This won't affect conditions and proactive measures on WUPUP at all, will it?
It will not.
Thank you.
Mayor Spearman.
Thank you. Question to the city treasurer through the city manager. Councillor Kaufman asked about the funding coming through the MRSR, but I've seen some presentations to council in the past about the snow clearing fund, and it was something along the lines of, in the last 10 years, we've had deficits in so many years and surpluses in others. Do we still maintain that information?
Deputy Mayor, Mayor Cheryl through to Mayor Spearman, yes, we do. The current deficit within the MRS are related to the snow removal budget. This is since 2008 is approximately $7.5 million.
So in the last 11 years, or maybe 11 or 12 years, we have under budgeted by $7.5 million?
Correct.
In your professional opinion, because this is a political decision, we understand that. But in your professional opinion, I don't know if it's fair for me to ask you. It would appear that we're not budgeting enough for snow removal.
That is correct.
Okay. And we're looking at reducing the service level according to the Director of Infrastructure Services, Mr. Hawkins. Okay.
The A108, to use your previous term, Mr. Mayor, would be a stretch goal. It would be about trying to optimize the resources that we have today to modestly impact the budget and without a significant impact on service level. Again, all bets are off if we have a winter like 2009 or 10, if you recall some of the storms that we had back 10 years ago. And that's where the MRSR is the backstop to deal with those extreme weather events. But on average, this particular initiative, A108, would have us do that optimization, look for continuous improvement. It would be A124, I would suggest, is a dramatic change in service level because, and I know that's not on the table, but it was presented in the context of what would we have to do significantly different in terms of our current deployment in order to achieve a more substantial savings.
Thank you. And generally, the perception I have is residents of Lethbridge, I'll save that for debate, but yeah, great. Okay, that'll conclude my questions on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? I see none. Does the mover wish to open debate?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I do appreciate the questions, and I do appreciate that snow and ice and our snow removal budget are difficult to manage, and they're hot topics in our community. The reason I chose this option and would not even wanted to entertain option 2. Option 2 is a drastic reduction in our ability to manage large events, massive events. What I saw in option 1, I saw a very focused and mindful way of reducing what I'm going to call the off event periods. When there's not massive snow and ice to control, that we do have an ability to control the costs during that time. I think this is an appropriate move. I think I'm now enjoying the term stretch goal. I'd like to see how this is accomplished. We do know that this will not impact major events. Those are backstopped by the MRSR. They always have been. Well, not always, but for over a decade, they have been, because we know when we get an event, it has to be clear for safety reasons, for business reasons, for residents' ease of travel. What I'm seeing here presented, as I said, is a very thoughtful measure to try and control those off-event operations. I appreciate that our administration looked at that, and I would ask for my colleagues' support on this.
Debate? I will.
Question.
Mayor Spearman?
Thank you. I did want to have discussion on this, so that is why I believe I seconded this motion. But I'm caught between financial responsibility and operational stretch goals, and I think the two can be different. I think financial responsibility calls for us to budget appropriate amounts for services. And when we have a deficit of 7.5 million over 11 or 12 years, that tells me we're not budgeting enough. That financial deficit is so high, it means that the cost of the operation that we're budgeting for doesn't match the operation itself. That doesn't preclude us from having operational stretch goals, which can be other than financial measures. They can be things that we're not going to do unless conditions hit a certain level. So I think the two are compatible. I just think it's financially irresponsible to reduce the snow clearing budget. And I consistently hear, and I understand there's a bit of an emotional reaction, but my perception is that residents of Lethbridge feel that we don't budget enough for snow clearing in the city. And I know everybody expects the roads to be clear within hours of a dramatic snowfall. That's not realistic, but certainly we need to make sure that the operation's funded. And I appreciate the zeal for spending reductions, but I can't support this specific initiative. Thank you.
Any further debate? Acting Mayor Hagan?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I can almost pretty much say as what he said earlier, the previous speaker, Mayor Spearman, and for those similar reasons, I will not be supporting this.
Thank you. I also will not be supporting this initiative. In the community satisfaction survey, snow removal was rated as highly important, and it was one of the things that people wanted us to put more resources towards. I don't believe that this initiative will accomplish that. Councillor Carlson, would you like to close?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll be brief because I can count. I guess what I would ask in this is I do appreciate what's been put out here, that we can do a better job of managing as what I keep referring to as those off-event costs. Even if this isn't approved by council, I trust that administration is always looking at ways. If we can accomplish this goal of reducing those off-peak or off-event monitoring and personnel costs, then this $190,000 it could be achieved in a savings, but remain in our snow removal budget to mitigate impact. So even if this fails, I hope that the message will be sent that this idea is a good one. And with that, I'll call for the vote.
Thank you. Vote by roll call, please.
Counselor Croson,
Opposed.
Counselor Morrow,
Favor?
Counselor Parker,
Opposed?
Acting Mayor Hagan,
Opposed.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro,
Opposed.
Mayor Spearman,
Opposed.
Counselor Campbell,
Opposed.
Counselor Carlson,
In favor.
Counselor Kaufman.
Opposed.
That's lost 7-2.
Thank you. Question of order, because A108 was defeated, does that leave A124 still open for discussion?
Somebody can put that alternate motion on the floor if they like.
Thank you. Do I have a mover for A124?
Mr. Chairman, can I just suggest in terms of process, we continue on other ones until we get to 124. It might give people the opportunity for some soak time.
We just had a discussion about this for 20 minutes. But
Some of us like to soak for a long time.
I will grant that. We'll leave that one on the board. 1 second, I have to take my strikeout off of that one. All right, moving along to 109. NMAC Center, reduction in service level at junior hockey games. Reduction of service at junior hockey games in building clearing, total cleaning, and reduction per game. I'll move that Finance Committee accept and refer A109 to City Council. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Campbell. Questions? Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. To City Manager Designate, how many security individuals do we have per game? There's a reduction here proposed of 4. What's our current complement per game? The context of the question is just around public safety, security at the game.
I'll have to get you that information.
Okay, thank you. The performance measurement and reporting is more of a statement than performance measurement. Are you looking at something else in terms of having a way, a metric, a KPI to report back to council?
This initiative, I guess, speaks to 2 different areas, and one of them is the cleaning piece. And so that is the deep cleaning that's received within the facility. And so it's just, there is no KPIs for that. It's, they do it 4 times annually. And from my understanding, the WHL feels that this facility is perhaps the cleanest in the whole system and would grade it at an A+ if it were to give it a rating such as that. So this reduction would see that go down to an A. As far as the, would we be looking at KPIs for reducing the hostesses and the security guards? We don't have that in place today, but that's something certainly we would be looking at in the future.
Okay, thank you. We're going from 4 cleanings to 3, correct?
No, it'd be going from 4 deep cleans annually to 2.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question, our tenant, who is our customer, was the Lethbridge Hurricanes, and obviously they pay rent on a yearly basis, and they expect a certain level of service. So are we going to be affecting in any way the level of service that they've been paying for or are continuing to pay for?
No, this initiative would be a negligible reduction in service. It was explained to me that we might see if you were waiting in line to get your popcorn or food, you might have to wait a few more seconds for something like that, so very negligible.
And have you had any pushback at all from that being our client that will be who's being served in this? Any pushback at all?
We haven't had them engage in the conversation at this time, but we would certainly monitor this going forward, and if we were starting to see some pressures, we would reevaluate it.
Thank you very much.
Acting Mayor Hagan.
Hi, so just my question is to Mr. Adair. So this will still bring us and keep us in line with an A rating, if you will?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Croson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Adair, for the information. I've heard you say the word negligible, that this is going to have minimal impact. Why is it in the medium impact then on our sheets? Sorry, did my question not come through?
No, they're having a...
Yeah, we're just discussing that. One moment, please.
You need Councillor Croson to clarify your question?
Right,
No, I think the question was quite clear.
Yep.
Because somebody must have seen it as a medium impact when they did the rating. Are we missing something, or was that a mislabel?
Yeah, so we're just having some discussions here. Sorry about that. One of the pieces when we talk about the current challenges we're facing with COVID is when we look at reducing cleaning, there is a perception that perhaps there's a safety implication to that. We don't, so that's why we did put this one at the medium level. We would not be, just want to make sure I'm clear here, we wouldn't be reducing the regular day-to-day cleaning. That would still be maintained though. However, there could be a perception because we're reducing the deep cleaning from 4 to 2 times annually that we're not doing what we should be, but in fact, we still would be.
So our major concern with putting in the medium is public perception. So if this is approved, it's how we roll it out, how we discuss it would be of value.
Yes, we would want to ensure that we have a good communication plan as we roll forward with this one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adair. It says part of this reduction is 1 operator during game events. Is there usually 2 or 3 operators at the arena, at the MX Center during games? There's at least 2, I know that. Is there more? So I guess I'll ramble on while you're looking for that number. It would concern me if there's 2 operators on and we're reducing it by 1 operator per game event.
Well, this initiative, we would, when you talk about operators, this initiative is about reducing hostesses and security guards and the deep cleaning annually. So we would still have the hostesses and security guards. There would just be less than that.
Yep. Further questions? Councillor Higgins, you have another question?
I do. I just, looking back to, again, being a 4-year budget and no junior hockey games going on in most of 2019 and 20, oh man, it's all blending in here together. 2020 games. Is this not, is there not a funding source going forward because of that? And why would that need to change if there's savings already within that budget.
This projection was, when it was put forward, we were planning on bringing the WHL back, and I think it actually was supposed to be, the first game was December. That did get moved to January, and we're unsure where that'll go from there with their certain spike in COVID numbers. So that's when this initiative was put forward. The other piece to this initiative is it does align with our KPMG recommendations about looking at reducing expenses.
Okay, so I just understand, we're still gonna have pretty much the same service now because these deep cleans would be, in my opinion, that were not done throughout this year because they were not needed. So help me understand, we're actually going to still drop this, although those cleanings that weren't done can go forward to future years?
City Treasurer.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro through to Acting Mayor Higgin, the current deficit, if you refer to the September 2020 operating forecast, is anticipating a $650,000 deficit for 2020. So I think what you're asking is, could surpluses be used to do additional cleaning next year? And so the answer to that would be there isn't any carry forward surplus for the NMAC Center.
Okay, so this is again going back to similar questions previously, that this is for the department and not just the reduction in service level. Again, as city manager said, look at the number, not at the whole department, from what I'm understanding.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I see none. Oh, Mr. Ed?
Yes, I just got some answers. We have, currently there's 12 security guards per game. And there are operators of 2 to 3 throughout the day. So there would be 2 operators per game remaining with this reduction.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Acting Mayor? Or maybe, sorry, was it?
It was Councillor Kaufman.
Councillor Kaufman, yeah.
Yeah.
Kaufman. Okay.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Adair, can you repeat that again, please? You said there are 12 per game and 2 to 3 per day, which would leave us 2 per game? Sorry, can you explain that?
Yeah, so security guards, the text response I have is there's 12 to 15 security guards per game at any given game. And the operators themselves, there are 2 to 3 throughout the day, and 2 operators would remain per game.
Oh, thank you. I thought the 2 remain were security.
No, those are the operators, yes.
Those are the operators. Okay, thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Further questions? I see none. Is there any debate for A109? Seeing none, is there any opposed to A109? I see none. That is carried unanimously. Next item is A110, Facility Services, Custodial Service Reduction. I will move that the Finance Committee recommend the City Council to accept A110. Do I have a seconder? Mayor Spearman.
Lighted.
Questions? Question I have, so just to double check, is this is mostly contract cleaners?
That's correct.
Thank you. And secondly, there wouldn't be, because we're talking about these are mostly offices we're talking about?
Yes, that would be cleaning of offices, except for the transit park and ride.
And in our areas that have shops, do the technicians themselves do the cleaning, or do we have cleaners that go and clean our shops?
So this would be the office spaces within any of those facilities. So the shop space would not be captured in this initiative.
Thank you. Further questions? I see none. Debate? I see none. Is there any opposition to A110?
I'm opposed.
Vote by roll call, please.
Counselor Morrow,
Favor?
Counselor Parker,
In favor?
Acting Mayor Hagan,
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro,
Favor.
Mayor Spearman,
In favor.
Counselor Campbell,
Favor?
Counselor Carlson,
Opposed?
Counselor Kaufman,
In favor?
and Counselor Croson.
Opposed.
Carried 7-2.
Q, A111, break relief reduction. I move that Finance Committee recommend to City Council to accept A111. Do I have a seconder? Mayor Spearman. Do we have questions? Mayor Spearman.
Even if City Council approves this resolution, it still has to be negotiated. There's no, this, so I wonder to the seating manager and/or city treasurer, how we treat this in terms of reductions on our screen.
You're correct in that it would have to be discussed with the union, so it's probably not, even should council decide to proceed, probably not good to include it in the numbers at this time.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that response. I just want to be careful I don't get into debate here. Okay, I'll leave my further comments to debate. Thank you.
Councillor Croson.
Thank you. Part of my question was what Mayor Spearman asked. My other part is we approved new money for PSCC for supervisors, et cetera. Is there any chance of, if this does go through and the union agrees, et cetera, that then gets applied to our other stuff? I know it's all the same books and it would just be, if we approve this, that comes off and it balances. Is there a way of just shifting this across to what we do need in PSCC?
So yes, this initiative will increase the risk should PSC or should the council decide to choose and adopt this initiative. When we had our previous discussions and we talked about the risk matrix, through the last discussions, we identified the current risk was at a 7.5, and moving forward with the dedicated supervisor would lower that down to a 4.5. If this was adopted here today, that risk would then increase back up to a 7, which would take it into that critical category again. The PSCC budget is made up of 96% as wages. So when we went through this exercise to reduce, the only thing that they could reduce to meet the target of 5 and 10% was wages, even though it did drive their already high risk even higher. So it would be my recommendation that we follow the same process we did with the PSCC dedicated supervisor risk and not adopt this reduction because it would enhance the risk within the PSCC.
Thank you for that information.
Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm trying to figure out if the question has been answered, so just let me approach it from this way. We've approved a supervisor position, and what you've addressed, and I'm not sure it's just a critical issue. In the background, it says this would cause a possible issue during minimum staffing overnight between 1 a.m. and 7 a.m. when there are only 4 staff on to be down to 3. But we've approved a supervisor position. recognizing they have a different responsibility, but as Mr. Westerson described to us, it's critical when you have a critical incident, and I'm assuming nobody goes on break when that occurs. Is the supervisor able to provide that fourth body if required, or is that out of scope? Is that not something that can be accomplished?
If a major event occurred and all staff were in the PSCC at their desks working, nobody would actually go on a break, even if we had that. The challenges that we face is 10 minutes into your break when you're not in the building or you're away from your workstation and one of those events hits where we need that situational awareness and that dedicated supervisor, those would be some of the significant challenges that we would face.
Okay, thank you. Second question on this then as well. Is this what you put forward here in consideration of us no longer providing EMS dispatch?
So the impacts if EMS dispatch was to go away on this initiative would actually reduce the savings from $311,000 to $228,000 because there would be less positions that would require the break relief within the PSCC.
Okay. Okay, that actually explains it. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. A question, so I can't remember if this has been answered, but the new supervisor position would have to cover, if we didn't do this, the new supervisor position would have to cover, or we'd have to pay for relief staff to come and cover. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the dedicated supervisor position would be covering it in this case.
Then it really kind of negates the advantage of having a supervisor if they're going to be covering the other positions for a couple hours a day.
Yep, and it's actually the break relief coverage is for 15 hours a day that it's captured where we have break relief coverage because we're talking a 24-hour period. There's 7 people during the day shifts and 8 people at nighttime during peak times. So it's 15 hours of break coverage throughout the day.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and my apologies. I did have to step away for a couple minutes, and so my question may have been asked. So forgive me. When I'm looking at this, am I reading it correctly that we have people on a 12-hour shift, but we pay for them to have their lunch break?
That is correct.
So the option that you're looking at that we need to discuss, I guess, in collective bargaining, is to say you're no longer paid for that hour. That's your own hour, and that is the savings.
That would be, yes, one of the options.
And is this common throughout our agreements that we pay for people's lunch breaks?
I would suggest there's a whole slate of options that are out there. Alberta Health Services, in fact, has a 45-minute paid break and a 1/2 hour unpaid break. Red Deer has paid breaks. Manitoba has no breaks. They have their staff sitting at the desks with no scheduled breaks. Winnipeg has 3 15-minute breaks. So it's all over the map on that. But I would suggest that paid breaks is more the common way of approaching it.
Okay, and that's through PSCCs, but through the rest of our corporation, is that how we manage?
I would think in emergency services, paid breaks are common. The rest of the organization, that is not common.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Spearman.
I'm just reading the description here. There's already a relief person coming in to provide them with their mandated 1-hour break during their shift. And they are required to stay on premises during this time. Is it the relief person that stays on the premises, or is it the people who are taking the break?
Currently, it's the individuals that are taking the break, so they're asked to stay on premise should a major event occur, they could be recalled back into the PSCC center immediately.
And the relief person would continue working.
Yes.
So we're eliminating the break relief, but we've just funded a supervisor.
That's what this
That's the
initiative-
proposal of this.
Yes.
So you would have a supervisor and a break relief person if this is defeated.
That's correct.
How do you arrive at this risk analysis? This really bothers me, the 4.5 to the 7. How do you justify those numbers?
So when the risk analysis was done, they looked at the industry standards. They used the Belmeal report that was done on the PSCC. They look at the NFPA standards, the National Fire Professional Association standards, and they looked at, I believe it's CALIA, is the 911 standards, and they tried to blend all of those together and to build a risk matrix through using all of those pieces. Also, then they wove in and talked to the end users. So they talked to the police service, they talked to the fire departments, and built the risk matrix from that.
And is there any plan to get rid of those 7-digit number calls that take up 45% of the calls coming in?
There's certainly, they're always looking at better ways to reduce those calls and to see if there's somebody else within the city that could answer them and deal with them. But right now, as Belmeo had addressed, there are a number of 7-digit numbers that come into the PSCC. Some of those are, from my understanding, are from LPS, and a lot of emergent calls do come in on those 7-digit lines, and therefore are answered in the PSCC and determined where they need to go from there, whether it's a PSCC or not. So it's something they're looking at to see if they can reduce that in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions. Is there any debate? I see no debate. Can we do the vote by roll call, please?
Counselor Parker,
In favor.
Acting Mayor Hagan,
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro,
Opposed?
Mayor Spearman,
In favor.
Counselor Campbell,
Opposed?
Counselor Carlson,
Opposed.
Counselor Kaufman,
In favor.
Counselor Croson,
Opposed.
Counselor Morrow,
Favor.
carried 5-4.
A112, should we just do the next two and then break, or do you want to break now? Thoughts? All right, we'll motor ahead and do the next two. A112, Public Safety Communication Center, reduce R3 peak hour position hours. I will move that Finance Committee recommend to City Council to accept A112. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Campbell. Questions? Mayor Spearman.
On this one, the bottom line in terms of performance measuring and reporting is once the changes are implemented, PSCC management will observe the operational efficiencies of the center to ensure the loss of these peak time hours is not in any way hampering operations. Is that a recommendation to proceed?
No, again, when these initiatives were put forward, they were to meet the 5% and 10% reduction. And PSCC has a 96% staffing model. This was their way to meet the exercise of fiscal reduction, and it was through reducing of staff. They will continually monitor And as things come back and as things change, they will come back to council and seek support should they need it in the future. So that isn't going to change today or going forward. They will continually monitor where they're at.
And as with the last resolution, A111, if this is approved, we still don't use it to reduce the taxation in 2021 because it still needs to be negotiated with the union. Is that correct? Mr.
That's
City
correct.
Manager or the, okay. Okay, so this one, even if it's approved, doesn't reduce taxation. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilor Kaufman.
Thank you. My question was answered.
Acting Mayor Higgin.
Question was answered.
Councilor Carlson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. When I look at A111 and A112, pardon me, individually they're ranked as medium. If they were grouped together, would they still just be medium? I'm concerned about cumulative effects.
Yeah, it's a really good question. These should have actually been in the high category if we were to, as we were to review things. They should be in the high category. Both of them separately should be in the high, and certainly cumulatively they would remain in the high.
Right, so approving both of these together it really increases the risk. Is that correct?
Approving both of these together would actually increase the risk previously from where we were at with the dedicated supervisors. So we would go from a critical level to the higher than critical.
As we are advocating to the province for continued use of our dispatch and call center, would they look at the risk factor in making any decision of whether to continue using us or not?
No, when we did the work on the risk matrix, we didn't incorporate the AHS side of dispatch, so no, that would have no bearing on that.
Excellent, thank you.
Mayor Spearman.
Both of these initiatives have to be negotiated. There's no guarantee that either one would be successful. But without council's direction to actually move forward with the negotiation, there's no opportunity for savings. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So what we're really doing here is we're not reducing taxation. We're looking to achieve operational efficiencies by having discussions with our employees about where efficiencies may lie. Is that correct?
That's correct, and we would negotiate, negotiation starts January of 2021. So we will enter the negotiations at that time with the IAFF.
So these are really just directional resolutions from council, and if we approve both of them, it really doesn't change the risk because there's no guarantee that either one will be successful. But if we're able to make progress, that gives some negotiating tools in order to achieve operational efficiencies.
I would just like to jump in if I could for a second too, and speak to the some of the medium, but also, and as Mr. Adair mentioned, that this should be high, and that's our fault, my fault. But as council gets into some of these more difficult medium opportunities and then gets into the high impact opportunities, I think it's important to remember that these are not coming forward as recommendations. We're bringing everything to council that came out of that 5%, 10% reduction exercise. So when you look at organizations like the PSCC, if they absolutely had to cut 5% or 10%, this is what would be on the table. The impact of this, though, as has been mentioned, is considerable from a public safety perspective. And so as we move through the rest of these high, I would just like to make that point to council that they're not there because they're necessarily being recommended, and we're happy to respond to questions like that, and one was posed to Mr. Hawkins earlier. This is the result of the work, and it's to show what it would take to achieve that savings in that business unit. It doesn't necessarily mean it's recommended or advisable. And I think, and I apologize, I should have jumped in an A111. I think these two are in that category. But yes, your point about these being directional, as council has decided in A111, and if they decide positively in A112, that it would be more direction for bargaining than anything else.
And the reason why I ask these questions is because the provincial government is telling us that running a PSCC is inefficient, and that they can save $6 million by doing it themselves because they're more efficient than municipalities. And so as we add expenses and don't reduce expenses, what message are we sending? And that's the challenge that I have, is I'm arguing one way with the government, and we seem to be going the other way locally. Thank you.
And I think there is a bigger conversation to have there, and a difference between efficiencies that they believe they can find across a province and the operations of an actual single PSCC. And again, if you look at those, if you consider the fact that 95% of the operating costs of PSCC are staff, and that we try and employ a best practices model to ensure that it runs as effectively as possible, and it is a critical service, clearly. That's what makes finding efficiencies in the PSCC challenging, because to find efficiency you have to reduce people, which reduces operational effectiveness.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Kaufman?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just to the city manager on that statement, it reduces operational efficiencies depending on the model, though, correct? And I'm citing what's the last sentence of the performance measurement reporting here. If basically if they can't manage with the way without hampering operations, then a model that will reduce the impact will be reviewed and proposed. So is that caution you just sort of provided to the mayor based on the existing model that we use?
Yes, it is based in the existing model, and you're right. There are, we would always strive to see if there are more efficient operating models. At this time, we haven't seen that or found one, and I think what the statement you just read indicates is that if we put this into practice and realize that the risk that this imposes is too great, that we would likely be returning, or we would be returning to address that. And there may be an organizational solution or response to that, or there may not. It simply may be that that the model we have right now is a good one, and we can't afford to reduce it.
Okay, thank you. Also, sort of heeding a bit of the caution about whether this is medium or cumulative, they are high. I don't know if it's something that Finance Committee would consider, not necessarily approving this, but not necessarily rejecting it either, about parking the money and sort of charging the city manager to see if the efficiency can be created. Because we do then risk, from what I understand in terms of how I'm hearing this, we do then risk of staff coming back and going, no, it's not going to, and we do have to look at a different model, which is going to require the funding. I like this idea, obviously, of challenging staff, and I think if you put the challenge in front of Mr. Adair and his folks, they'll step up and they'll find it. But it does increase that risk that we're talking about here. So I'm wondering about parking the money, but challenging or charging staff to move ahead is an option here as well.
Before you answer that, Councillor Kaufman, thank you for that. And just one question that is related is, does the Belmeo report address operational efficiencies or operational models?
Yes, it does, and they have actually implemented some of those, and one of those is a new phone system to help with the seven-digit numbers that we are talking about. They've talked about looking at a different staffing model, trying to work through the peak times and things like that. So yes, they have talked about that. When we talk about the current model on its efficiency, it is a tri-services dispatch model, which is kind of the leading, most efficient method of operating at this time. We did come previously from private or separate fire, separate police dispatches, and amalgamated to this one to create efficiencies. Now, not saying that there aren't more efficiencies out there to be found, and we're always looking and trying to look at better ways to do that, and we'll continue to do so.
Does that help, Councillor Kaufman, or not? That they're actually looking at efficiencies already?
Could I respond to Councillor Hoffman's question?
Sorry, City Manager, go ahead.
Just, I think that there's seems to be some merit in that notion of parking the money in light of the decision council made with respect to supervisors and Mr. Adair's comments that maybe what administration needs to do is take some time to move forward with the supervisors and some of the other recommendations that are already underway in response to the Belmeo report, and maybe return to council after a period of time to report on where the PSCC is.
Thank you. And in terms of process, City Clerk, do we just withdraw the motion?
That can be done with unanimous consent.
If we withdraw the motion and don't deal with A112, that means it stays in the budget. Is that correct?
Can you repeat the process?
If we don't deal with A112 now, it means the money's still there. It stays in.
Based on the decision that was for A11, I would just recommend that if council supports this, that it would just be, it wouldn't impact the tax at this point in time. It would be stated as a directional resolution approval, and that we would need to come back. I think if we want to discuss these any further, we should, my recommendation would be go in camera. There's obviously some personnel impacts related to these two, and I just wonder if that's hindering potential future discussion.
So we would withdraw that motion and ask for a directional, actually ask for this money to stay in the budget? Is that what you're saying? I'm sorry, I'm just missing.
Sorry, I would just recommend that it wouldn't be a budget reduction at this point in time if it's approved, and that the department needs to go away and do some additional work in terms of the operational review and the approval of the supervisors, and just get a better understanding of where they're at, and if there is the opportunity for future savings, that it would come later as a budget reduction in some future budget. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, Acting Mayor Hagan.
I just want to confirm what's been mentioned by, I think, Mayor Spearman, A11 and A12, both of those discussions where this is not going to be immediate, and it may never happen depending on what happens with our bargaining. So am I missing something here, I guess, is the question, or is that true that this is not going to take place unless that is in January, those discussions move forward and they decide to not accept this? Is that correct?
That's correct.
If I may, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So safe. Sorry.
Oh,
so
sorry.
safe.
Hang on.
Yeah, I just want to.
Acting Mayor Hagan, continue.
So just to confirm, safety will continue just the way that it is until those discussions happen. Correct.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Kaufman, you want to add something?
Well, just sort of clarification to Acting Mayor Hagan's point. We've approved to remove the 311,000 out of the 2021-2022 budget. My musing, my caution, was the as Councillor Carlson identified, the incremental application of the additional 100,000, and it was not to actually remove it from the budget. It was to park it, and on the wise counsel of the CAO to have staff look at it, address it, and then come back and have the conversation with council. And I think what I'm hearing the treasurer say is, I was going to say use the word notionally approve. We've had that conversation before. Approve it, and if staff can create that capacity, come back and we remove it. I'm sort of on the middle fence at the moment about taking it out versus keeping it if we can't achieve that. I don't want to put the PSCC into a situation where it's going to be overly challenged. I do think they can find the efficiency. So that's just the clarification around why I was suggesting it.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I didn't know there was a middle fence. I assumed there was just the one fence and you were on it or off it. But I have a question on this and the previous resolution. And I'm hoping that either I don't see the city solicitor on, but maybe the city manager can give me some comfort. This almost reeks of negotiating in public, which I'm loath to do. Are there any other initiatives coming up or that we've dealt with that are similar to this? And I'm not sure if you understand what I mean about negotiating in public, but I'm just wondering if we're straying into that.
Yes, we're awfully close. I'll defer to the solicitor perhaps for some comments.
I think to the extent that we've been discussing what would have to be discussed with the union and leaving it at that point, we're on the right side of the line, but I agree with the city manager that we are getting awfully close to the line.
Yeah, that's my concern right now as well. So I'll just back out. Thank you.
So I'm going to carry forward with this motion. If Finance Committee wishes to defeat it, then council can decide what to do with the dollars that are attached to it. It's far less confusing that way. And it actually makes a definite decision on A112. Is there any debate or any more debate? Mayor Spearman.
This is just directional, doesn't impact taxation. So it just puts it on the table. That's all it is, and just leaves it there. There's no significant financial impact, but it's important to have discussion on all issues that can possibly identify efficiencies. Thank you.
Other debate? I see none. Oh, Councillor Crowson? Are you just flashing
Yes, ready to vote.
Are you just flashing?
Yes, ready to vote when we vote.
Thank you very much. I'll call the question by roll call.
Acting Mayor Hagan.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Favor.
Mayor Spearman.
In favor.
Councillor Campbell.
Opposed.
Councillor Carlson.
Opposed.
Councillor Kaufman.
In favor?
Councillor Crowson.
Opposed.
Councillor Morrow.
Favor?
Councillor Parker.
In favor.
Carried 6-3.
We'll take a break now till 11:05. Thank you. We'll be in recess. Welcome back to Finance Committee. Oh, I'm spilling my coffee all over. We are on A113, Noka Spay Neuter Program Grant. I move that Finance Committee approve A113 and make that recommendation to City Council. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Kaufman. Questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Do we have wonder if we have any data on how many, have we expended this budget annually for the last couple of years? Are we getting full pickup, full take up for it? I'm just looking for a bit of data on that.
Mr. Adair.
I'm just flipping through some papers here, but what I can tell you as I flip is in 2019, 398 cats were spayed, 34 dogs. 2018, 384 cats and 65 dogs. And I'm just looking for some financial backup.
And so based on the criteria of the program, these are people who are needing financial assistance with accomplishing this?
Yes, and in 2019, the cash flow was $45,000. Of that, $42,276 was used for veterinary expenses, and the spade and neutering, and the rest was an administrative fee.
Thank you. So is this the entirety of the budget line for this then?
Yes, $45,000 total.
Thank you.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to our members on the Animal Welfare Committee, which I believe is yourself and Councillor Campbell.
Yes.
Does your group work with this group at all?
We, Animal Welfare Committee provides oversight to NOCA on this program. There are some discussions when we have some overlap in terms of the feral cat issue that we talked about yesterday or the day before.
Can I ask if you've had a discussion on this? Was it your group recommending this cut, or can you tell me if this is an effective program?
No, this is a highly effective program. It's one of the most cost-effective things, again, that we do. We have 400 animals a year are spayed or neutered. NOCA provides all the administration for it. NOCA does all the contacts with the public and public education. NOCA does the income screening. And that's all I have to say. So I don't believe that the Animal Welfare Committee would be in favor of having this program cut.
Thank you. No further questions?
Thank you. Any other questions? I see none. Debate? Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I won't be supporting this initiative. I'll leave myself open to being swayed if somebody wanted to treat this like other fee-for-services we've done and reduce it by a 5%. But as it's proposed, this is an incredibly cost-effective and an important program. When I hear figures of 400 animals being spayed or neutered, the quick math I can do, knowing the arithmetic or geometric, I should say, reproduction of animals, this is reducing pressures on our shelter, pressures on our residents, and so I won't be supporting this initiative.
Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I will not be supporting this. And as a member of the Animal Welfare Committee, I've seen firsthand the work that this does, how impressive the people are, how dedicated the people are that work with this program, and the cost effectiveness of the program as well. It is money well spent and needs to continue.
Further debate? I as well will not support this initiative. You have to not just look at the numbers and the amazing numbers that NOCA helps out with every year. It's the downline effects of what happens if we don't do this. It puts a stress on our animal shelter. It would put a stress on all the animal rescues. It would create the existence of more feral cat colonies and other issues with stray dogs as well. So I hope Finance Committee does not support this. And I will call the question by roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Opposed?
Mayor Spearman.
Opposed.
Councillor Campbell.
Opposed.
Carlson.
Opposed.
Councillor Kaufman.
Opposed.
Councillor Croson.
Opposed.
Councillor Morrow.
Favor.
Councillor Parker.
Opposed.
Acting Mayor Hagan.
Opposed.
It's lost 8-1.
So, moving along, we're now going into the high impact items. Do we want to do a quick tally update? City Treasurer, please.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro, based on the approvals to date, the 2021 proposed tax decrease would be 1.24%, and the 2022 tax increase would be 1.59%, with an average over the 2 years of 0.17.
The question is, if we've approved reductions in 2022, why is that number not going down?
Councillor Miyashiro, it is going down. It was at 1.82, and there have been very few additional increased reductions. That was said very poorly, sorry, in 2022. So the reduction happens in 2021 and it carries on. So in order for the 1.82, which is now 1.59 to decrease, there needs to be additional further reductions in 2022 for that to happen.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think you did ask my question, because I was wondering the exact same thing, and so I'm wondering and why, and I'm trying to find one to highlight. Sorry, let's see. Because when we do the 4-year budget, it is harmonized. We did, help me, City Treasurer, 1.82 per year for 4 years, correct?
That's correct. So we typically do the average. Given that we were having some conversation about 2021, I asked Ms. Jared to break it out, but the average at this point would be 0.17% tax increase per year for 2021 and 2022 if we do the average. Just given the conversation, I just wanted to break out each year as well. So at this point, we could have a 0.17% tax increase in 2021 and a 0.17% tax increase in 2022 based on the decisions that have been made to date.
Thank you, and I think you were reading my mind, because I was going to ask if we could do something like that. So if council wanted to, we could approve a 2-year budget that contemplates 0.17 in 21 and 0.17 in 2022, which is pretty much a rounding error.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Acting Mayor Hagan.
Yes, just a question for the city treasurer. I think that when we first started, correct me if I'm wrong, the 2022 was higher because we had already made a resolution for 2020, which kind of pushed it up to those 2 years. And I may be confusing in saying that, but I think that's the way that it was, is we started off this whole process, and although they're both going down, 2022 was higher to start, correct?
At the starting point, we had 3.64% tax increase in 2021 and a 1.82% tax increase in 2022. And now the 2022 tax increase is 1.59 if you just look at it in isolation. And on average, it's 0.17% per year.
Oh boy, that confused it more. Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Any more questions for City Treasurer? No, there being none, let's move along. Initiative A114, which is connected to A118, general maintenance options 1 and 2. This will reduce general maintenance in open spaces across the city, including to the efforts to maintain water quality in storm ponds, graffiti abatement, snow clearing, irrigation operations, and forestry management. Do we have a mover for A114 or A118?
Carlson will move. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Councilor Carlson.
I'll move A118.
Do you have a seconder?
Hagan.
Acting Mayor Hagan will second that. We're now dealing with A118. We have questions from Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Hawkins, I apologize. I should have emailed you earlier just on this particular question. Do you know what we have for permanent staff in parks? Just permanent staff?
Yeah, the permanent staff complement, I believe, is 32 full-time employees.
Okay, thank you. The one thing you mentioned in here as well, forestry maintenance will be reduced, increasing tree mortality. Again, is this on urban foresters or is this part of the general maintenance component?
This is both general maintenance, but it also includes some urban forestry component as well.
Okay, can you just perhaps elaborate on increasing tree mortality?
The risk we run in terms of a reduced level of service is again, we have a comprehensive urban forestry program in order to deal with pruning and dieback and those kinds of activities. Again, if you reduce that activity, there can be a risk that because we're slowing our response to certain things, that our assets could be at risk, and there might be more dieback. Again, this is in combination with irrigation operations as well. If we reduce irrigation in dry years, that can stress the urban forest as well. Again, just increases mortality rates.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. In further to this, it talks about maintaining open spaces. Are there strategies perhaps that could be implemented to allow certain areas of our open spaces to be more naturalized, which would reduce the need for maintenance?
I think that's absolutely in play. Part of this does address, in combination with some previously approved ones regarding dryland mowing, is this aspect of naturalization or increased inventory and naturalization that was raised in the operational review with KPMG as a potential strategy as well. I think by default, if we reduce resources, we're going in this fashion, we will have to look at to what extent we can zero-scape or naturalize and reduce the more intensive, labor-intensive maintenance activities in the parks.
Thank you for that. And can you help me a little bit with the storm pond water quality? What do we typically have to do in a year with storm ponds?
So there's a number of strategies. We deploy diffusers and fountains and the aerators in a number of the ponds. Floating islands need to be maintained. weed control, algae control. There's a number of activities associated with stormwater pond quality.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Huggins. I think you may have highlighted my ignorance. When I think of storm ponds, I think of the dry, for the most part, the dry bowls.
No,
that are-
those are the easy ones to maintain. That's essentially just grass cutting and making sure debris is kept away from the inlet and outlet structures. This specifically speaks to activities associated with the wet ponds, and we have an increasing number of wet ponds across the city in terms of our stormwater management strategies. So it is about a water quality issues associated with those wet ponds.
Thank you. You've clarified my ignorance there. Now, with the storm ponds, the wet ponds, are they all connected to the irrigation system, canals?
For the most part, that's true. There are a couple that aren't. And one of the strategies that we're looking at is, to the extent that we have connections to make-up water, irrigation make-up water, we'll convert the potable water irrigation to actually non-potable water irrigation. But for the most part, when those wet ponds are going in, we do look at opportunities to irrigate the surrounding open space, the green spaces, with irrigation water as opposed to potable water.
Agreed, and thank you. And just because it's a question that's been posed to me by community, that a lot of our water quality issues could be addressed just by more freely flowing the water from the irrigation canals through our system.
That is a strategy, and that is something that we are that we do have in place in some of the ponds, and we are looking at improving that irrigation flow through or make up water, as it's described, in order to maintain one of the strategies to maintain water quality.
Thank you. Appreciate those answers.
Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wonder, are there any health concerns of the public when we talk about not maintaining the ponds? You know, the LJ grows. You're talking about odors and things. Is there a health risk at all with people wandering around the parks and getting involved? I'm just curious.
Only to the extent that that people are actually come in contact with the water. It is, for the most part, aesthetics. It's smell, it's odor, it's the look of the features themselves as well that we're dealing with here.
Thank you.
I see no more questions. Does the mover want to open debate?
Thank you. I'll close.
Thank you. Any other debate? I will start. I will not support A118. I think the reduction is too much for what that dollar goes to. As Mr. Hawkins said, there's more and more of our neighborhoods, we're asking them to create wet ponds for stormwater storage or some kind of stormwater storage, and that's the most attractive feature for developers. If we choose not to maintain storm ponds, as well as the other issues that this money addresses, it makes the city less livable for everyone, so I will not support this. Mayor Spearman.
I too will not support this resolution for the same reasons. So that's my debate.
Thank you. Is there further debate? I see none. The mover to close.
I'll just call the vote.
Call for the vote by roll call, please.
Mayor Spearman.
Opposed?
Councillor Campbell.
Opposed.
Councillor Carlson.
In favor.
Councillor Kaufman.
Opposed?
Councillor Croson.
Opposed.
Councillor Morrow. Councillor Morrow.
Joe, you might still be on mute.
Councillor Morrow, you're on mute. Okay, Councillor Parker.
Opposed?
Acting Mayor Hagan,
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Opposed?
That's lost 6-2.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd like to move A114.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Do I have a second? I will second that. Questions? No questions. Debate?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I was hoping to set a loftier target, but I think this is a doable target. I hope my colleagues will agree that this is a fairly minimal reduction, that the bulk of the work will still get done. I just can't help but keep reminding myself that our community understands that we're in a challenging situation, and they have tasked us, and we've tasked ourselves to try and meet those challenges. This may not be a forever and ever amen. This is a 2-year interim adjustment to the budget to try and address some of the challenges, and I hope my colleagues will support this.
Further debate? I see none. Close.
Call for the vote.
Call for the vote by roll call, please.
Councillor Campbell,
In favor.
Councillor Carlson,
In favor?
Councillor Kaufman,
In favor?
Councillor Croson,
In favor.
Councillor Morrow, Councillor Parker,
Opposed?
Acting Mayor Hagan,
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro,
Favor?
Mayor Spearman,
In favor.
Councillor Morrow. That carries 7-1.
We'll move on to A115, seasonal displays, which is associated with A119, which is option 2. Do I have a mover for A115 or A119? I see.
Deputy Mayor, can I ask a question before making a motion on these?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. To City Manager Designate, the increase is marginal. I'm not going to get into the whole 5%, 10% thing, but the impact certainly is much greater between 141 and to 141,000, 155,000. Are we back into we're back into that staffing complement numbers thing? Is that the issue here?
I can speak to this. I've got a bit of a breakdown here. So there's 3 components associated with the seasonal display. Actually, probably a more appropriate description of this initiative is city appearance. It deals with seasonal displays, which is, you know, the Christmas displays and lighting and those things in parks, the floral program, and an elimination of some pond fountains. We have some aesthetic fountains as well that we currently maintain. The biggest difference between A115 and A119 is only with respect to a deeper cut. A119 is a deeper cut with respect to the Christmas lights in Galt Gardens and Brewery Gardens. In A115, we suggest a $6,000 cut, whereas it's a $20,000 cut associated with that activity. So other than that, these are essentially equivalent in terms of the overall impact. It's really aesthetic things that we do today in the form of seasonal displays, floral program, and these fountains that we currently maintain.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, a fountain like a Bellagio? We got a Bellagio here?
There are in a couple of the a half a dozen or so of the wet ponds in the community, Chinook Lake, a couple locations on the west side. We actually have or fountains that actually spray, and they do provide some water quality benefit, but they, for the most part, are being replaced over time with a more effective bubblers, diffusers, which are submersed and don't provide the spray, the fountain spray. So we do currently maintain several of these across the city.
Oh, thank you. I was totally under the impression those were purely for aeration. I didn't realize that there was to be an aesthetic aspect to it as well. So
That's correct.
thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Councilor Carlson, will this help you determine whether or not you want to put forward a motion?
Just one quick question.
Will it help you decide whether you want to put forward a motion? Because if it's not, then it could be asked during the question period. It's your decision. I'm just asking you to clarify.
I don't know.
Maybe you better ask it then.
No, I'll step up.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a mover for A115 or A119? I see no movers for either.
I'll move A115 to get it on the table.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Hagan. Do we have a second? I do not see a second. There's no second for this motion?
I'll second that to get my question asked. Should have just let me ask.
You're killing me. Seconded by Councilor Carlson. Questions? Councilor Carlson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Question through you to City Manager or Designate. The only issue I have with this is it's an all or nothing program. If we had breakdowns, and I know this is getting into the weeds, but a decorative fountain, some folks obviously didn't even know they existed, probably wouldn't have been missed for a year or two. Other things, the floral gardens, which I'm imagining are things outside the Yates, the planters, things like that will be missed. I'm wondering if we had a breakdown of what each of these costs, or is it the fact that, well, we wouldn't hire the person, so none of it would get done? I'm struggling with it's an all or nothing option. Is there a way to split the baby in half, so to speak?
Councilor Carlson, for just 1 second. You're the one that asked the question of the city treasurer earlier, and you're the one that said you understood how they did this.
Well, no, but I'm saying, could I say I'd approve a cut of 75,000, but leave and make sure that goes towards XYZ, but doesn't address ABC.
Hang on, the city treasurer would like to respond.
I just refer Finance Committee to page 207 in the binder. It's under the PBB section, which shows an allocation of the entire budget for parks by specific programs, under which the seasonal displays, and again, this is some assumptions have to be made, and this is an allocation of overhead and other things as well. So, but the total seasonal displays budget is roughly $230,000.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. I appreciate that program-based budget summary. It does help. So if I'm reading this correctly, that what's being proposed here, now I have to scroll back, is a cut of most of that, but some of it will still happen. Is that correct?
That's correct. There is still under, if we're dealing with A115, there is, or A11, whatever the other one was. There is still, there is still a modest amount of budget left. But this is there are dedicated folks that look after seasonal displays, and in particular the floral program, which is the bulk of the cost reduction that's being proposed. Of the 141 that's identified in A115 or the 155 in the other program, 120,000 is associated with a potential reduction to the floral program. If council was inclined to just fund half of that, or reduce half of that, or pick a number, it would just mean that we would, there wouldn't be a complete abandonment of the program. We would continue to focus on the high-profile parks like Galt Gardens and some entry features and the brewery gardens and those kinds of things as well. But there, and then we would adjust the seasonal complement accordingly in order to accomplish that. But this is discretionary spending. It's presented on that basis. It does add to the quality of life and the appearance of the city, and we have historically done this as for aesthetic reasons. And so again, it's a value judgment as to whether or not you want to do what's proposed here. Again, this was in the context of the overall parks target of either 5 or 10%, but it does clearly come with a service implication.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. I'm still trying to find a question that's going to stump you today, so thank you.
Further questions? I see none. Councillor, or Acting Mayor Hagan, open debate.
I'll stay for closing.
Thank you. Is there any debate on A115? Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I know this is an exercise in budget reduction, and we want to get to the almighty zero and all that. I guess I'm one of those guys that says, you know, what is the value that you can put on aesthetics? And for me, it's hard to do that. But this, you know, part of being in the city and growing up in the city and seeing the seasonal displays that happen, it adds to our lives, and I think it's really important that we keep these displays happening for our city. And I think even in times like this, when everything sucks, you know, you just want to see something that inspires you to. There's hope and there's joy and there's something that adds to it. So I can't support this motion.
Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Like the previous speaker, I can't support this either. We do have to consider what we're doing here in a cumulative, thank you, altogether. An altogether overview of what it is that we're doing. We're cutting back on some of the other aspects of the, you know, you can call it maintenance, but it is beautification. This is a little bit more in your face. It's the color that the cones in your eyes pick up. It's the things that attract your attention. It is about the aesthetic. And when you talk to people about community, they may not notice that we haven't picked up all the gravel off the side of the streets. They may not notice that we are not cutting the lawns at 2 inches. We're doing it at 3. But they do notice when flower beds sit empty, when lights and decorations aren't up. It's very much about the experience of actually being in place. And this has some great value to the community, and so I won't support the reduction here. Thank you.
Okay, further debate? Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I too won't be supporting this. I think what we've proven during COVID is that people got out more and loved our city, and were walking and enjoying and spending time in our community, enjoying it. I'm pleased that Councillor Kaufman talked about the cones in his eyes. I was going to bring up my central phobia being greatly impacted by this decision, so I won't be in support.
Mayor Spearman.
I'll echo the previous speakers. It's a little too close to the Grinch that stole Christmas for me, so I think there are some things that we have to do, and they do seem, in some people's eyes, to be not essential, but in some ways, maintaining community spirit and being a leader in doing that is essential. So I will not be supporting this resolution. Thank you.
There's no more debate. Acting Mayor Hagan, would you like to close?
Yes, thank you. Same as the previous comments that were made, I'm one of those ones that complains when we don't have our Christmas decorations up on time, and I have done that in the past. And we've talked about this being aesthetic reasoning. Now, again, I need to go back to the reductions that have been asked, that we've asked these different business units to do. Now, I love the decorations. There's no safety impact. It's aesthetic. And if we want to try to follow what we said about the 5 to 10% reduction, this is the less of the two, and there's still a budget amount in there where there will still be some, but it's talking about tightening the purse strings a little bit during these COVID times. And so I think it's important that we do support this resolution. I see what's from the debate previously that I'm not very hopeful, but yes, I will definitely support this.
I'll call the question then by roll call.
Councillor Carlson.
Opposed.
Councillor Kaufman.
Opposed.
Councillor Croson.
Opposed.
Councillor Morrow.
Favor.
Councillor Parker.
Opposed.
Councillor Acting Mayor Hagan.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Opposed.
Mayor Spearman.
Opposed.
And Councillor Campbell.
Oh, no.
Lost 7-2.
Is there anyone that wants to move A119?
Was that Campbell's attempt at a Grinch or a Santa?
I think he has gas.
Come on, that was Santa.
Is there anyone at this time that would like to move A119?
I will, but I would like to amend it.
Actually, if we can do this after lunch, sorry, we have emergency advisory committee meeting at 11:45.
Okay.
Which we'll have to go in camera for and prepare for right now. If we can, Acting Mayor Hagan will make sure we get 119 on the order right after lunch. We'll recess till 1:15. Thank you.
Deputy
Do
Mayor,
those of us online stay?
Please stay online. Yes.